Hi, I'm Perry Atkinson, General Manager here at theDove. Hey, check out our other videos and check out our website at thedove.us. Welcome to Focus Today. I'm your host, Perry Atkinson. Always a joy to have with us Dr. Joel Klein. He's with Ventana Wellness, and we're here to talk about something I think we all suffer from once in a while, some more than others, and that is acid reflux. And all right, before we get into Dr. Klein, here's one for you. Mr. Chestnut, who's kind of like Joey Chestnut, you ever heard of him?
No.
He's the world's hot dog eater.
Oh, okay, right.
World's fastest hot dog eater.
How those guys.
Okay,
it's
well,
amazing.
guess what? He got another record over the weekend. He ate 9.3 pounds of turkey meat off the bone in 10 minutes. Now, I would imagine he's dealing with reflux if he didn't fall asleep because of tryptophan.
Who knows what kind of, he may be on a very scientific training regimen of stretching his stomach. I don't know how these guys.
Wow.
And then you have these little skinny guys who win the Nathan's hot dog, Coney Island, whatever thing. Yeah, there's this little skinny guy doing it. I don't know how they do it.
Okay, it must be a mind over matter thing.
Something like that.
All right, well, I think at one time we all suffer with it, and over-the-counter remedies is off the shelf with this kind of stuff.
Well, this is the thing. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry, and I remember back when I was even a resident, when Tagamet first came out as a drug, it was the first ulcer drug. It became the #1 selling drug in the country. It surpassed Valium, really? Our #1 prescribed drug in the country. This was like the early 80s. So obviously this is a big issue, but it's not being caused by what people think it's being caused by.
So what is reflux?
Well, reflux, to define it, reflux just means moving back in the opposite direction. Okay. So it's the stomach contents and stomach acid moving from the stomach back up into the esophagus is technically what it is. Now, what it's being caused by is a whole nother issue.
All right.
Because the big surprise is that, I'll tell you what it's not being caused by. For the most part, it is not being caused by too much stomach acid. The medical literature shows.
I laugh because that's what it'll all be.
Of course, and
promoted.
we're all taking acid blockers, but that's the point. That's why I'm here, to try to educate people into what's really going on. The medical literature shows that people with reflux don't make any more acid than people who don't have reflux.
Wow. Wow, what a statement.
So what is going on?
Yeah.
What's really going on, actually, believe it or not, in some people, this sounds completely paradoxical, it's too little acid. Most people have too little acid, not too much. Now, in some people, in people who are taking the acid blockers and they don't help, they already have too little acid. And actually, there are supplements, something called betaine hydrochloride that you can get with digestive supplements, or people will use apple cider vinegar to help things actually get better. I've seen that happen. More often, what is happening is that the stomach itself has become irritated, and even the mucus lining that protects the stomach from its own acid has been eroded away by stress, diet, drugs, antibiotics, I think bacterial overgrowth. So what you have is this weird situation where you don't have enough mucus to protect your stomach from your own acid. And a lot of times you still don't have enough acid to really digest your food. So what happens is even a little bit of acid feels like too much because your stomach doesn't have the protection. And that's where all these acid blocking medicines work.
All right. Okay, so what relief are they getting if they aren't really addressing the problem?
The same relief that if you're trying to treat the oil indicator on your dashboard, if you inactivate the sensor, you get relief from the sensor activating.
Oh, okay.
But it's still not putting oil in the car.
Okay.
So I'm saying if your stomach is in this condition where even a little bit of acid, you may not be enough to digest your food, and people can tell that. If you get indigestion immediately after eating, especially with higher protein, things like red meat and all that, that is almost always a situation of too little acid. But if you don't have any protection in your stomach left over to protect yourself from even that little bit of acid, again, it will feel like too much. So suppressing it helps the heartburn symptoms. It will not help your digestion, even though people will notice their digestion is worse, even though their heartburn is better.
Okay. So, are there times that it is too much acid?
There are times,
Okay.
mostly in younger people. If you're over 50, it's pretty much, very unlikely it's too much acid. Younger people, high stress, it can be too much. And usually too much is going to be pretty much a stress-related type of phenomenon. But for most people who are on these drugs, it's not the case. And what we do is when I actually work on healing the stomach lining, which is not done with drugs, it's done with diet and naturopathic supplements, then I actually get people off their acid blockers.
Wow. Okay. This opens up a lot. All right. So if you're not producing enough acid, and yet I know a lot of people who just can't enjoy a meal.
Right. Right.
I mean,
so what happens is you don't tolerate even a little bit of acid because the mucus lining, the stomach has become irritable. Now, there are a couple of reasons for that. So the first job is to heal the stomach lining. Now, first off, allergenic foods. We go back to our friend gluten as being a big one on the list. Some people corn, but sometimes food allergies can be a big problem with this. Certainly just processed foods themselves. When they looked at diets that help reflux, it was, surprise, the lower carbohydrate diet that seemed to help reflux. So the diet issue and getting away from the processed foods, the flours, the sugars, and these types of things. Then we use naturopathic supplements. One of my favorites simply to use is something called DGL, which stands for deglycyrrhizonated licorice. It's licorice root that's been treated to remove one of the compounds in licorice root that can elevate your blood pressure. And using this in fairly high doses for several months can help heal the stomach lining. And I will do that, get people on the right diet, then see if we can wean them off their medicines. You can't just stop the medicines because that's the problem. You've dug yourself a deep hole. We have to try to heal the stomach lining first and then see if you can be weaned off the medicine.
Is there a difference between reflux and heartburn?
No, well, the heartburn is the symptom. So heartburn just means you're having, frequent, you're having burning in the esophagus is spasming. Reflux is the cause of the heartburn. So reflux is the diagnosis. Now, if you're having reflux is usually, used when they call GERD or gastroesophageal reflux disease. It's people with very frequent heartburn, nightly heartburn, like when they lie down, or having very frequent attacks of that. And it is something that you can't ignore because in some people, that frequent acid in the esophagus will burn the esophagus lining and over time cause chronic changes, something called a Barrett's esophagus, that is precancerous. So it's not something that can be ignored and people just keep taking Tums over and over and over again because number one, the acid is burning in their esophagus already by the time they reach for the Tums. And I've had a couple of patients over the years overdose on Tums to the point where one gave himself kidney stones because all the calcium then crystallized in his urine. These are both young guys who didn't know any better. The other one actually had to admit to the hospital in kidney failure. Because his kidneys were completely clogged up by the calcium crystals. And all we had to do this was back in the day before the stronger drugs, put him on some Zantac and flushed his system out with IVs and he was fine. But they were eating 15 to 17 Tums a day. And go, well, I thought calcium was supposed to be good for you. Okay. I said, well, yeah, and water's good for you too, but too much of it and you'll drown.
All right, we're talking about acid reflux or not enough acid, but basically reflux, heartburn. I want to ask him about where the gallbladder and the pancreas play into this.
Okay.
And if you want to join us, you can. The number to the studio is 541, forgot the number, the other, forgot the 776-5770. I'm sorry, I had a blank there because we have a new number now that comes to the studio. 776-5770. That's the number if you have a question for Dr. Klein. We'll be right back. Jeez. Okay, we're back with Dr. Joel Klein from Ventana Wellness. By the way, ventanawellness.com is the website, and of course it's a wonderful clinic right here in the Medford area. And if you're looking for a good doctor, here's one right there, Dr. Joel Klein. We're talking about reflux. All right, we're going to the break. You explained the difference that heartburn basically is a result of the reflux.
Right.
Where does the gallbladder and the pancreas play into this problem?
A whole bunch of different places. The gallbladder, number one, gallbladder symptoms can feel like reflux. So people can get spasm in the gallbladder and it'll feel, for some people, sometimes it's right under the rib cage, and some people it's in the middle here and they can think it's reflux. Doctors have done this for decades, Jonathan Wright, particularly up in the Seattle area, who found that there seems to be this association of people with low stomach acid and gallbladder disease. Now, whether this is, again, people being more prone to food allergies, other issues, but a lot of times the gallbladder disease can be a result of the long-term low acid. Pancreatitis is usually pancreatitis comes from the gallbladder disease, unless alcoholism is probably the most common cause of pancreatitis, but the other common cause is people with gallstones from the gallbladder disease will flick little stones down into the duct that
the two share.
Yeah, right. The pancreas and the liver both empty into the same little area there, the same duct, and if a stone gets in there and clogs it, not only will it clog up the liver, it'll clog up the pancreas.
All right, let's take a few calls, and then I've got a bunch of questions here. But hi, Steve, you want to know how to stop taking antacids?
Yeah, hi, Perry. I have the problem that he was describing before the break. My father had this acid problem and ate Tums like candy his whole life, and he died from cancer of the esophagus.
Uh-huh.
So when I was in my 50s, I had my first colonoscopy. They checked my esophagus at the same time, scoped it, and mine was very inflamed and irritated. So I went on Prilosec.
Right.
I mean, it didn't matter what I ate.
Right.
I had to eat Tums or something, just like my father was. And the doctor said, well, we're a little more worried about the cancer than we are what the Prilosec's doing to you. So,
well, in his case, he's right, especially if you have the inflamed esophagus. So that would be something, you would need, like I said, I will have to work with people individually on that because it takes a very intensive program of healing your stomach and healing the lining to see if you can be weaned off the Prilosec at a future date. Right now, you're right. You kind of need it to protect you. You're in danger without it.
Right.
But it is not healing the source of the problem.
Yeah.
It's protecting you from the consequences of the problem. So you would need, like I say, we do naturopathic remedies, dietary issues. It's a little bit more, it's a fairly aggressive program with people. Obviously, caffeine, all these other things that aggravate it, to then do that for several months to then see if somebody can be slowly weaned off the Prilosec. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not just something I can tell you, oh, do this and you'll be fine. No, you got a potentially serious problem and it would take aggressive management.
Yeah.
But it can be done. I've done it more than a few times.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Steve. All right, 776-5770 is the number to the studio here if you want to talk to Dr. Klein about reflux. Marlene, hi, what's your question today? Marlene?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yes, Dr. Klein. My
Hi.
name's Marlene. You know me. I'm a patient of yours.
Okay.
I've been taking Nexium,
Right.
and the pharmaceutical company stopped paying for it.
Right. Well, the insurance company stopped paying for it because it's
so
too
now
expensive.
I'm taking Dexlent,
Right.
and it's not working.
Right. Because your problem is probably...
I was up at 4:30 in the morning.
Right. All right, so that's something, I don't know if you and I have dealt with this, but you and I need to come up...
No, we haven't been able to deal with this
Well,
matter
then you
yet.
need to schedule an appointment and we need to deal with it because too much acid is not your problem. That's why the medicine is not working. We need to work on your diet and healing your stomach so that you can then tolerate acid, which actually will be more likely to help the problem.
There you go. All right. Make an appointment. Thanks, Marlene. Where does caffeine come into this?
It's an aggravator.
Is it?
It's just one more, just pouring more gas on the fire that if you're trying to heal the problem, you're just making it worse with the caffeine. It's a stimulant in there and it will worsen both the acid and I'm not sure of this, but I think it also helps to even open up the sphincter to make it easier for acid to get in there. By the way, that's another point I want to make. Everybody's told, well, I have a hiatal hernia. 40% of people walking on the street have a hiatal hernia. That's not the cause of the problem. It makes it easier to reflux. A hiatal hernia is when part of the stomach actually goes up into the chest wall through the diaphragm. And in the chest, there's negative pressure to keep your lungs expanded, so it allows the acid to get through easier. But it is not the cause of the problem. Not everybody with a hiatal hernia refluxes. So the thing is, people say, well, I'm doomed. I have a hiatal hernia. What can I do? It says the hernia is not the cause of the problem. It just makes it easier for you to be symptomatic from the problem.
All right. Hiccup and burping is all part of it?
Well, the burping is a lot of times food not being digested in the stomach because of not enough acid. So it putrefies in there, makes gas, and then the belching is going to come up. Hiccups are irritation of the diaphragm from any number of different things that can happen in the stomach. That's just a nervous irritation.
What is GERD?
Gastroesophageal reflux disease. It's just what we're talking about. It's more severe. It's not just occasional heartburn. It's recurrent reflux of acid from the stomach, gastro, into the esophagus.
Do infants get this problem, have this problem?
Well, infants have reflux problems because they have immature sphincters in the esophagus and these things. However, again, progressive and naturally oriented doctors have found a lot of infant reflux is due to food allergy. And since a lot of them are being fed cow's milk-based formula, that there are a lot of times, they may be allergic to the cow's milk protein in the formula.
A lot of babies spit up and do all that.
Yeah, normal spit up that's normal because the sphincter is not mature and all that. But ones who are having a more severe problem and to the point where they're aspirating it, giving them asthma and lung problems, that's a more severe problem.
All right, some foods to avoid.
If it hurts when you eat that, don't eat that.
Well, so shoot, if it tastes good, spit it out.
So again, I go, believe it or not, like I said, the sugar, the sweets, flour products, processed foods, caffeine, chocolate may be in some people an aggravator, depending. See, sometimes the acidic foods can set people off, sometimes not. So you can really kind of gauge if things like tomatoes or grapefruit or those things make it worse. Obviously, don't eat those, but it's not a definite, oh no, you shouldn't eat those.
All right, as a kidney stone sufferer, severe at times,
right? I've had
a bad history of them.
Right.
All right. So the first thing they did was test whether or not it was acidic or calcium base.
Well, that has to do with the stone, whether it's a uric acid stone, a calcium oxalate stone, because it has to depend with the physiology of your kidneys, and if you're over-excreting one thing over another, that's a different story.
Okay.
But what people have people a lot of times are hearing now, oh, we need to eat an alkalinizing diet because when the body is acidic, it's complicated how the urine being acidic and the body acidic. A lot of those extra acids are being secreted in the urine. But to make the body more alkaline so that there's less inflammation, you actually need a healthy amount, paradoxically, of stomach acid. So people who don't have enough stomach acid, their body is actually going to be more acidic. How can my body be acidic if I'm not making enough acid? It has to do with stimulation of the pancreas. But a healthy amount of stomach acid actually helps the body become more alkaline and less prone to inflammation.
Very interesting. All right, now, is a gallstone a result of reflux or a cause of reflux?
Neither.
Okay.
It is a common result of the same underlying problem, which can be low acid and food allergies.
Okay.
So one does not cause the other, but they are both causes of the same underlying problems typically.
Can diet correct the gallstone problem?
To not correct it can keep it from being symptomatic. So people who know, fats will stimulate the gallbladder. Once you have the stones, it's kind of hard. But typically it can help it become less symptomatic, but we're not really good. Dissolving the stones has not worked well over time, so they just don't do it.
All right, so give us a recap here, Dr. Klein, because the Tums type products are flying off the shelves.
Right.
And they seem to give a temporary relief, and therefore they think...
That's exactly what they're for, occasional temporary relief. If you're having more regular symptoms, that's when people are taking more of the acid blockers. But that's the problem. If you're having a more regular problem, number one, if you can't survive without the acid blockers, then that means you're in this low stomach mucus, low acid problem, and you need the acid blockers to protect you. Somebody who just has frequent heartburn may actually try to use apple cider vinegar or this betaine hydrochloride supplement and see if it gets better. If it gets better, then their problem was just low acid, and that helps. You take the betaine with each meal. If it makes it worse, then again, they're in this low acid, low mucus problem. That takes healing of the stomach lining with herbal things and diet over time, so that then over a number of months, then people can either tolerate their own acid better and they do fine, or they can tolerate one of these, more apple cider vinegar or acidic supplements.
All right, let's see if we can squeeze in more call. Casey, are you there?
Here.
All right, you have a question about silent reflux. What is that?
I do. I have been told that I have silent reflux, and
Right.
What happens to me is I don't get any heartburn. I don't have any bad taste of anything acidic in my throat. I just get kind of a tight, blocked feeling in my throat.
Right, you're having spasm, right.
Yeah, and I have had the belching and all that fun stuff, and I'm gluten-free. I tried that.
Right.
But I am on Prilosec, and every time I try to go off of it, I don't have great success. So I'm wondering if that also is a not enough acid situation.
It is. It can be. But it's also, in your case, probably also that insufficient stomach mucus problem.
Okay,
so you would need a good
DDL.
naturopathic program of restoring and healing the stomach lining with these demulcent, what are called demulcent herbs of slippery elm, marshmallow root, aloe, cat's claw. And you'd need an aggressive program with that in addition to the diet over time to then see if you could be weaned off the Prilosec. Usually people just can't stop. Usually what I'll do, depending on what dose they're on, we go to a lower dose or we go into every other day dose, and over time see if we can acclimate the stomach to that. But yeah, you'd need a more aggressive program.
And do you feel like the HCl would be beneficial?
No, because you're already telling me you can't tolerate acid.
Right.
Because you can't go without the Prilosec. So no, that'll only make it worse.
Make it worse for me.
Right.
Okay. Okay, well, thank you.
Okay.
All right, there you go. Thank you. Well, this is very interesting because what I'm also hearing you say is that the bottom line is that the stomach lining needs to be healed.
Much of the time.
And that's a process. It's not an overnight thing. There's no pill for it.
No, because it's something that developed over years and years and years.
Okay. And you usually start by, how do you treat that? I mean, I know you treat it with very herbs, but do you do a blood test to find out how damaged it is?
No, well, you do the blood test to look for the H. pylori bacteria that causes gastritis and ulcers. Although it's still, in my view, not the bacteria's fault. The bacteria is, again, taking advantage of a stomach lining that allows it to invade more easily. But sometimes you have to treat that bacteria, and there are naturopathic and pharmaceutical ways to do it. That's the only thing you'll find in a blood test. The rest of it is the person's presentation. What they're telling you tells you what's going on, and that's when we need to use an aggressive program of diet, supplements, and I also occasionally, now that's the other thing, there is a connection that I forgot when you mentioned. Some people, if they have kind of what we would call toxic bile, and it can be toxic from environmental toxins, it can be toxic from toxic anger, is what I'll get into. And I have this some homeopathics from Germany that help with that bile issue. Because yeah, that's one of the things that happen is that toxic bile is refluxing into the stomach. The bile is helping to dissolve the stomach mucus lining, and but it's actually a gallbladder bile problem. So I forgot that when you mentioned it. But that, when all these other things haven't worked for patients, the naturopathic, the herbs and all that, I'll use this homeopathic for toxic bile.
All right, we got to have you. I want to do a program that I'm hearing you say that stress, anger.
Oh yeah, I can tell you, I have both personal and professional stories on that one.
Let's do a show
on anger and gallbladder.
Okay, so it's time to bring the spirit into the equation.
Yeah, absolutely, because that, not always, but that can be a part of the problem. I have one particular patient story that we can tell.
Well, listen, any last minute Thanksgiving we shouldn't do? Or call you on Friday.
Be smart. I tell people, okay, look, if anybody who's got a problem, okay, that we know it's the sugars and all that. All right, just pick one of the starches and pick your favorite one.
All right,
don't do all the potatoes and the stuffing and the dessert and all of it, and then blame it on the tryptophan and the turkey when you pass out at 8 o'clock.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
You're here from here. All right, VentanaWellness.com. VentanaWellness.com. Dr. Joel Klein. Thanks, buddy.
You bet. My pleasure.
We'll see you. We'll be right back.